In many parts of the world, a single cave can hold thousands, sometimes even hundreds of thousands of bats. These remarkable animals spend their nights flying through the dark skies, feeding on insects and playing an important role in local ecosystems. But in certain regions, bats are also connected to long-standing food traditions that have existed for generations. For some communities living near large cave systems, bats have historically served as a seasonal source of protein. Over time, this practice became part of a broader food supply chain built around traditional harvesting and preservation methods. What begins deep inside a quiet cave environment can eventually become a preserved food product, sold in regional markets. So how does that transformation actually happen? The journey involves several carefully managed steps, from responsible collection and transport to cleaning, preparation, and drying techniques that help preserve the meat for long periods. Many of these methods were developed long before modern refrigeration, allowing communities to store food safely and transport it across long distances. Understanding this process offers a glimpse into how traditional food systems develop around local wildlife resources and how cultural practices, survival strategies, and modern discussions about sustainability can all intersect in unexpected ways. Across several regions of the world, including parts of Asia, Africa, and the Pacific Islands, bats have historically been used as a source of protein. In areas where large cave systems are common, these animals have long been part of traditional food practices that developed over many generations. For communities living close to these habitats, bats were not only a familiar part of the landscape, but also a seasonal food resource. In many cases, harvesting bats was tied to specific times of the year, often when colonies gathered in large numbers. Local residents developed techniques for collecting them safely and efficiently, passing these methods down through families and communities. What began as small-scale gathering for household consumption gradually evolved as nearby markets and trade networks expanded. Over time, some communities began organizing the process more systematically. Instead of preparing the meat only for immediate use, workers started cleaning, processing, and preserving it in ways that allowed the product to be stored longer and transported farther. These early methods laid the groundwork for small processing operations where bat meat could be prepared for local sale. One of the most important techniques used in these systems is drying. Dried meat products have been valued for centuries because removing moisture helps prevent spoilage. This makes the food easier to store without refrigeration and lighter to transport across long distances. In regions where electricity or cooling infrastructure may be limited, drying remains a practical and reliable method of preservation today. These operations exist at a unique crossroads. They reflect long-standing food traditions and provide income for local communities, while also drawing attention to modern discussions about food safety, wildlife management, and sustainable resource use. Understanding this background helps explain how a traditional practice can evolve into a structured process that connects culture, economy, and changing global standards. The process begins with locating areas where bats naturally gather. Large cave systems and forest habitats often host massive colonies, sometimes containing thousands of animals. Harvesting usually takes place when bats are most active, typically at night, or during the early morning hours when they leave or return to their caves. Depending on local traditions and regulations, harvesters may use nets or other controlled capture methods designed to collect the animals efficiently. Once collected, the bats are transported to nearby preparation areas or small processing facilities. At this stage, workers begin the initial sorting process. The animals are separated based on size and overall condition before further preparation begins. Careful handling during this stage helps maintain hygiene and reduces the risk of contamination. During processing, next comes the cleaning and preparation stage. Workers carefully remove the fur and process the internal organs according to local preparation traditions. The meat is then washed and trimmed to remove unwanted material. In some preparation methods, the meat may be briefly boiled. This step helps remove impurities and prepares the meat for the preservation stages that follow. After cleaning, some processors move on to pre-treatment methods that improve flavor and shelf life. The meat may be lightly cooked, salted, or seasoned with regional spices. In certain areas, smoke is also used to begin the preservation process while adding additional flavor. The most important preservation step is drying. The prepared meat is typically placed on racks or hung in open-air drying areas or smoke chambers. Over time, moisture slowly evaporates from the meat. Removing moisture is critical because it helps prevent spoilage and allows the product to be stored safely for extended periods. Once fully dried, the finished product is packaged or bundled for sale. From there, it may be distributed to local markets, small restaurants, or regional food traders, completing the journey from cave habitat to preserved food product. One of the most fascinating aspects of bat habitats is the sheer size of their colonies. In some parts of the world, a single cave can contain hundreds of thousands of bats living together in dense clusters along the cave walls and ceilings. These massive colonies make caves some of the largest wildlife gathering places on Earth. When bats leave their roosts at dusk, the sky can briefly fill with thousands of flying animals, creating a dramatic natural spectacle. The methods used to preserve bat meat are also rooted in history. Long before electricity or refrigeration existed, people developed practical ways to store food for extended periods. Drying meat became one of the most reliable solutions. By removing moisture from the meat, the risk of spoilage is greatly reduced, allowing the food to last much longer. These preservation techniques have been used for centuries and are still applied today in many traditional food systems. Another reason dried meat remains valuable is its practicality. Once moisture is removed, the product becomes lighter and easier to transport. In remote regions where roads, refrigeration, or modern storage systems may be limited, lightweight dried foods can be carried long distances without spoiling. This made dried meat an important food resource for travel, trade, and long-term storage. At the same time, bats themselves play a crucial role in the natural environment. Many bat species help control insect populations by feeding on large numbers of insects each night. This natural pest control can benefit agriculture and surrounding ecosystems. In addition, some species help pollinate plants and spread seeds, supporting plant growth and forest regeneration. Understanding these ecological roles highlights why bats are considered an important part of many natural systems around the world. Because bats are wild animals, harvesting practices in many regions are subject to growing attention and, in some cases, government regulation. Wildlife authorities and local officials may set guidelines on when, where, and how harvesting can take place. These measures are designed to prevent overexploitation and help ensure that bat populations remain stable in their natural habitats. Conservation organizations also highlight the ecological importance of bats. Many species contribute to healthy ecosystems by controlling insect populations and supporting plant life through pollination and seed dispersal. Because of these roles, maintaining balanced bat populations is considered important not only for wildlife protection, but also for agriculture and environmental stability. Another area receiving increased focus is food safety. When wild meat enters local markets or small commercial supply chains, proper handling and preparation become especially important. Discussions around hygiene, processing standards, and safe storage practices are becoming more common as communities look for ways to protect public health while continuing traditional food practices. This creates a complex balance. On one side are long-standing cultural traditions and local economies that rely on these resources. On the other are modern conservation goals and public health considerations. Finding ways to respect cultural practices while protecting wildlife populations remains an ongoing challenge in many parts of the world. The journey from a remote cave habitat to a dried meat product found in local markets reveals how traditional food systems often develop around the natural resources available to a community. For generations, people living near large bat colonies adapted their food practices to the environment around them, creating methods for harvesting, preparing, and preserving what nature provided. Behind the finished product is a long chain of steps. It begins with locating bat colonies and carefully collecting the animals. From there, The process continues through sorting, cleaning, preparation, and preservation techniques designed to keep the meat safe and usable for longer periods. Drying, in particular, has allowed communities to store food and transport it across distances without relying on refrigeration. Once prepared, the final product enters local markets, where it becomes part of regional food